Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Godzilla, King of the Monsters. So first off, I guess, if you came to this movie to see Godzilla smash stuff and fight other monsters and have monster battles, then this is probably, I guess, the best American Godzilla movie. That's not saying anything, but it definitely is, which is, yeah. And I think it is the best in terms of what American Godzilla movies are. They're not the best Godzilla movies, they're not what Godzilla represents, they're not what the reputation and the legacy of the character is whatsoever, but they kind of are what they are. Godzilla has always represented America in Japanese cinema. In American cinema, he doesn't really represent anything. He's just a giant monster, and that's sort of how it is. In some ways, that's cool. But it kind of goes into the problem America has with Godzilla. It's something that this movie doesn't really try to fight or kind of change. And that's kind of sad considering that this is directed by a pretty clever director, Michael Dougherty, who did Krampus and Trick or Treat, and didn't really show kind of his real auteurness in this film whatsoever. Like most smaller directors who go on to big things kind of don't really show much of a voice when they get to the bigger things. You get your occasional Taika Waititis or your James Gunns or something, but then you get everyone else and you're like, oh, this was directed, I can sort of tell by someone different, but not too much. Like you can tell that most of it's done by second unit people who are really qualified. I think there's a certain flow and movement of this that Michael Dougherty does very well, but it just doesn't have the fun of those previous two films. And I was excited to see him do this, but I don't think he was able to give me those kind of movies. Like, I don't know if I'd ever see this movie again, which seems to be a problem with American Godzilla movies. Now, the term Godzilla, King of the Monsters actually comes from the 1956 American version of Gojira, or the original Godzilla film in Japan, which was then cut down because it would probably make most Americans feel bad because it was definitely supposed to represent America in that one. And they basically cut it down and shot Raymond Burr in a day, not a joke, really did, and put him into the movie and releases Godzilla, King of the Monsters, and it was a big hit. And through most of my lifetime and most of the lifetime of Godzilla in America, it's been known as kind of like these badly dubbed monster movies, and you know, the whole idea of like, oh no, Godzilla is attacking kind of stuff. And there wasn't a lot of respect for the character, to be honest, in America. We never really understood fully what Godzilla was because our perception of it had been largely tainted. The original cut, I think, was released on bootlegs here a little bit, but didn't get a good re-release until about like 15 years ago, or probably less than that. I think it was 2005, 2006, maybe 2004, around mid-2000s, let's say, and it was given a proper re-release and restored and all that, and then Americans were a little more familiar, mainly film geeks, but original cut of Godzilla and seeing like, oh, there's like a whole thing here. Now, I get people get into Godzilla because they like to watch, you know, man in suit fight each other. I'm not going to say that Godzilla only works on a metaphorical level. But when you have things like Shin Godzilla, which happened recently, and then you compare it to Godzilla, King of the Monsters, it's a bit of a fucking joke. Because you get to Godzilla, King of the Monsters, and you have all these American logistics, which don't really mean anything. And the whole point of Shin Godzilla is to show how those logistics can fail you. The logistics and all the back and forth talking is very much part of the theme of Shin Godzilla. Whereas you look at something like Godzilla, King of the Monsters, its theme is it's a big movie. And that's kind of the issue. Its own structure in what it's doing, an empty experience. Now, if you go, but that's what I want from this, then hey, guess what? This movie works for you. But in terms of, you know, comparing it to the legacy and the filmography of Godzilla, hey, guess what? This movie is not that great in that perspective. I think it is sort of fun within that, and a funner version than, you know, those other two, but it doesn't really work 100%. I'm not the biggest fan of Shin Godzilla, but I have to admit that those represent something, and those stay with me a lot longer. There's a lot about this film that really doesn't stay with me, and it feels just like average blockbuster thing, from eco-terrorists to, you know, stupid twists to like just Kyle Chandler being in the... I mean, this movie's so overcast. I don't understand why all these people, like, who is like, but what if that storyline in every Godzilla movie that you don't care about is cast with really Oscar caliber actors? And I'd be like, why would I want that? Why would anyone want that? Like, just cast a bunch of no names and spend it all on special effects. Like, however much you paid for Kyle Chandler and that guy, that older English guy, Charles Dance, and Vera Farmiga and all those people. Like, I'm sure they're not cheap. I'm sure they made quite a lot of money. You didn't really need to have them in this. And they feel kind of like, what was the point? Like, have some fun character actors who are cheap and have them do fun things. Like Thomas Middleditch and Bradley Whitford feel like the kind of character actors who really have fun in a horror kind of monster movie. That would be awesome. But that's the kind of problem with this film, is it kind of tries to like intellectualize it, but like you don't really have like intellectual things to say. So why do that really? It's like you want to act smart, but you're really dumb. It's also like Shin Godzilla just happened, and then the whole idea that like Americans can help Godzilla, which is like such an American foreign policy thing. When Ken Watanabe helps Godzilla, and clearly he's working with the Americans and constantly like, but what if we help Godzilla because we're America and America's real great? I hate to break it to America, controversial statement, but Godzilla is better than America. Deal with it, and he doesn't need your stupid help. He's Godzilla. He's a giant monster with, atomic breath and stuff. Don't write that into your movie to make these characters and this dumb subplot mean something, because it doesn't really play very well. It's like Godzilla is Godzilla. If he's the king of monsters, he doesn't need, insignificant tiny hairless ape help. Both this and the 2014 one, and probably the Matthew Broderick one, I don't know, it's been a while, play like these like stupid disaster movies that I probably wouldn't see if Godzilla wasn't in them. And I think that's kind of the problem with a lot of more recent Godzilla films, and why Shin Godzilla worked actually really well, is it had a thematic reason and made Godzilla represent something. The other things is like, I have this really stupid thing that you would never see in a million years, but what if I put that in a Godzilla movie? And I'm like, why would you do that? I think just cast, like, put Scott Adkins, have him, an action hero, have him kick people, so between Godzilla fights we see an action sequence or something, rather than like, hey, what if these people have marriage troubles and stuff? Did Kramer vs. Kramer need Godzilla? Yeah, definitely, but like in reality, like that would be better than this movie, because it's not just Dustin Hoffman and Meryl Streep having a spousal argument. But the point is that American Godzilla films don't know what they are other than blockbusters. And Godzilla films are more than blockbusters. There's plenty of different kinds of Godzilla films. And I think this is one that gets the more fun kind of the Toho films, but it doesn't fully get into that. And I think it's mainly because the human subplot is just like way too much in this. As much as I like the monster fights, I'm really so sick of like these badly lit, dark, big monster fights. Like, you spent all this money on these big giant monster special effects, and then like you're covering up with like, what if King Ghidorah has like a big storm cloud that follows him everywhere? And you're like, what? Why? Like, I don't understand why you would want that, especially like in Antarctica during a hurricane. Like, what? Why are we fighting there? In the Toho films, it was always brightly lit. I kind of feel like the Godzilla films need to step up to where the MCU is and just have brightly colored stuff fight each other. It's like very rarely do they do the darker kind of thing. I mean, I know at the end of Endgame or something, so I took away your YouTube comment. But most of the time, you can really tell what's going on. In this, I think you could, but it feels like it's a little too close to the kind of darker kind of thing that we saw before, where people are kind of embarrassed of, the so-called franchise that they're doing. They can't just like get into the geekiness of the whole thing, which audiences really embrace. We need to get over that in terms of Hollywood corporate filmmaking. Like this whole idea of like you're still playing in Bryan Singer's 2000 X-Men, and we just saw Endgame, and like we're just like, there's this cultural thing that just like has not been met. It's like, are you guys just like not seeing the Marvel movies out of spite and not knowing where we are right now? Because it's just like, I'm kind of, especially this is another Warner Brothers thing, it's like, what is your deal with that? Just like let me, and especially after Shazam, which I think was a better movie than this, just like show me the brightly colored Godzilla fighting a brightly colored Mothra, with the King Ghidorah. Like, I want to see the colors of these things. I don't really get that. I will say I am a little tougher on Godzilla movies, and I do think this was fun, and I did have fun with it, and I did actually really enjoy the monster fights. It was just like there was too much bullshit in this movie, and it's too much bullshit that didn't really represent very much of anything. You've had so many chances at bat for America to make a good Godzilla movie, and it just doesn't really want to deal with itself. It wants to embrace itself, and certainly I think that's the default way to make a disaster film, especially, post-Independence Day or whatever, which is sort of interesting considering the other American Godzilla movie. But when you look at what's going on with this Godzilla King of the Monsters, it seems even more ridiculous when a film in Japan called Shin Godzilla just like seriously just fucking did that just recently. Michael Dougherty didn't watch Shin Godzilla, and the executives who made this didn't watch Shin Godzilla. They live in their own like weird kind of monarch cinematic universe thing and think like, nah, we're good. Because there's no real influence of Shin Godzilla on this. And in fact, it was like, why weren't any of those people like brought on as advisors or producers or something like that? Why was that not done? And when you look at Godzilla King of the Monsters, it's like, you know, I don't think America can do Godzilla best. I think they need that help, and they need to like meet this character halfway, and that's been a continual problem. It's like, sure, you had the victory of making like Godzilla smash stuff a lot, and that's cool, but it just feels like there's still more to go. We're getting a little bit better, and you know, this is probably what we wanted in 2014 and all that. Don't really understand why Millie Bobby Brown's in it so much. I don't understand why any humans, like, just make it like one human, you know? Like in the first one where you had like the weird doctor guy and like the lady and the other dude and like the older guy, like that's all I needed. I didn't need any more than that. I don't need congressional hearings, and especially if like there's literally no reason for them. Like it's like what if the government was involved? I'm like, why? And like there's no real reason. It's just like, but we need explosions. I'm like, do you? Because you have Godzilla in this, and Godzilla equal explosions. So I'm confused. They don't know why they're doing things. They're just running on this disaster movie thing, and the disaster movie part is always the weakest part. The Godzilla part, in even the 2014, the Godzilla fights are cool. In this, they're a lot cooler by leaps and bounds because Michael Dougherty knows how to have fun. Especially at the beginning, I noticed the cutting, you got kind of like hints at that, but you don't get the Krampus trick-or-treat guy. You get like his work for hireness, which I think is boring. You know, there's a reason people keep bringing up Taika Waititi and James Gunn, and it's not because they're obsessed with the MCU. It's because, you know, they were an indie auteur who brought a voice to a big blockbuster film, and for whatever reason, this movie just doesn't seem to be able to, and these Godzilla films don't really seem to be able to do that. You know, both times I've liked the idea of the directors they picked, it's just the execution I always find like kind of baffling. You know, they have no real point of view, especially in this day and age when we have so many attempts, we have so many different franchises of Godzilla running at once. We need some sort of a perspective, because like there's just so many. If you're a Godzilla fan, like these films kind of like fall by the wayside at a certain point, and the reason we're still talking about Shin Godzilla is because it made an impression. I think this made an impression in terms of like I had a good time during a summer movie, and this is like maybe the most pure kind of like classic kind of summer movie it is, but that I've seen this summer so far. But in terms of like, you know, everything, you know, and Godzilla and stuff, it's sort of like weak, you know. It's like it's like the monster fights were there, but the movie itself just isn't. And I really wish someone could give me a full package of a Godzilla film from an American filmmaker, or just stop doing it. Should Americans be doing it in the first place? Yeah, probably not. But until then, I think they just need to find a reason that they're making these films beyond like the financial one, because artistically they just feel as kind of empty as we think of summer blockbusters are. But if you came to it for a stupid summer blockbuster, it is there. It is 100% there, and that is what you're getting. But in terms of the rich cinematic tradition of Godzilla, Americans continue to fail to measure up. So if you have seen Godzilla, King of the Monsters, and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.